It's the morning after the night before, and here's my report on the last round of the FIDE Grand Swiss tournament taking place in Samarkand, Uzbekistan. So, if you remember, going into this final round, there were 5 players sharing the lead. There was always going to be a pile-up. So I'd like to start with the game between 2 of those players sharing the lead, Giri and Hans Niemann. So remember, at stake, the top 2 in the tournament would go through to the Candidates Tournament 2026. So here we go. Giri playing the English and e5. I mean, choice of opening is going to be absolutely crucial for, a nervy last round game. And interesting that Giri went for e3. In recent times, e4 has become quite popular. There's g3 as well, but e3, it's all about keeping tension. So this is basically a Rossolimo reversed. And, well, it's been played for many, many years. I remember playing this as white on quite a few occasions back when I was playing professionally, which shows you how old it is. There we are. And a3. So white has the bishop pair, and if black doesn't react, then, white is going to push forward, play bishop b2, and basically have quite a pleasant game. So black has to create something in the middle of the board, and if white takes like this, then because black gains time against the queen, this is actually quite a favourable open Sicilian for black, actually, because you can push forward with the attack very quickly. So that's why d4 is played. So this is absolutely standard. And now there's going to be an exchange in the middle of the board. And c5. And white has to be careful here, of course, because you can see most of white's pieces are still on the starting blocks. I've played queen f4 here previously. But queen h4 has been determined that this is the best move. And this quickly leads to an endgame. Exchange on d5, a check, bishop d7, exchange of queens, and then, now, if you've got the bishop pair, you want to keep the bishop pair. You do not want to exchange off. That would make life easy for black. So the bishop comes back to e2. So we've got an endgame level material, but white has the 2 bishops, and also quite a nice kingside or central pawn majority. Black has very easy development and a queenside pawn majority. So there have been a few games played like this. But castles has been played previously here. But Giri simply played f3, and this is a useful move anyway. White wants to advance in the middle, or perhaps on the king side. And the king can happily sit on f2, nearer the centre. So, although Giri spent for over 14 minutes on this move, I assume that he had prepared this line pretty well. f6. So black's king stays in the middle, and rook d1. Bishop e6, yeah, both sides developing. h4, I think this is important. Giri knows that at some moment he's going to have to use his kingside pawn majority. So he just starts to claim space, before... I mean, I don't know if g5 will be played quickly. That's perhaps a bit too early, but in any case, h4 marks out territory, prevents g5, because that exchange would give white greater control in the middle. Useful move h4. You've got to gain space at some point. And e4. So basically, given the right moment, white wants to just push forward on the king side and start using this majority in one way or another. Knight c6. So in the meantime, there is a slight drawback to every pawn move, and that is, you can see that this square is potentially available for that knight. So very important that bishop e3 is played to prevent black's knight hopping in here. And those bishops look pretty good. White has center. Now, I would say this position, it's quite clear to me this is slightly better for white. But black does have some play here, based on the fact that this square is a little bit weak. So a bishop might hop there, a knight might hop in there. But white is definitely better here. Rook d6 from Giri. I think this position is sort of swinging between black has very good drawing chances to, white has significant advantage and can play on. Niemann played rook e8. I'm not sure about this move. It doesn't feel to me like it achieves very much. I think it's unlikely at the moment, certainly with this strong pawn chain, that the e-file is going to be opened. I think better just to play rook d8. But rook e8 played. g4. So Giri takes the time, feels the time is right to advance these pawns on the king side, and that looks absolutely right to me. So certainly preventing f5. Later on, g5 could be nice to open some lines. Knight b7, Niemann pushes the rook back, and they repeat the position a couple of times. And this time Giri goes all the way back to d1. So it looks like Niemann would have been content with a draw. I think from the position he's got from the opening, I think that's the best he can really achieve. It's quite a stable position. And a draw could be enough to take him through, but it all depends on tiebreak. Knight a5, the knight comes back again. So basically, Giri could take a draw with rook d6, but, certainly white can play on with absolutely no risk. So in a way, I think Giri has achieved an excellent outcome from the opening. He's not risking anything, but he can play on really without any danger. Niemann plays king e7 here, which covers squares on the d file, fair enough. But things from that moment on, things start to go wrong. I think the best chance is to put the knight on b3. Now either rook b1 or rook c3, but let's say rook c3, and then c4. So this knight does have potential to come in via c5 to d3, maybe even give up that pawn, but that would open the c5. So bishops of opposite colour, obviously if white, if black succeeded in getting a pure opposite colour bishop endgame, no rooks on the board, then excellent drawing chances. Still a very long way to go, but I think this is black's best chance to try and time this. But instead king e7 played. Now, it would be nice to play b4 in this position. But if you do it immediately, then this is absolutely fine for black. And rook c2. Black has counterplay. Giri plays bishop a6 first. Good move. Pushes the rook away from the c-file. Exchanged one pair of rooks. And then played b4. So you can see that this rook is left alone on the c-file. Black's rook on the d-file can't enter because these squares are covered, and d1. So this is problematic for black. So knight b3 played by Niemann. Rook c3, keeping the rook on the c file. Now, if black exchanges, I mean, this could have been done on the previous turn, then you can see that the rook has possibilities sometimes to move to c7. But you can see also that this knight is really very poorly placed. It can't get back. It can come back to d4, but then rook c7 would be very strong. So it's a bit stuck there. And white's bishop's in control, basically. And then it would be a case of advancing on the king side. And, you know, like this, an f5 coming soon. And you can see this knight is actually in big trouble. So Niemann played rook d6. Okay, I think it's time we had a think and drink moment. So we're reaching a crucial moment in the game where there are captures on the board. Finally, both sides have engaged after this move b4. How would you play as white in this position? Cheers. Do you want to improve your chess? Get exclusive access to live masterclasses with yours truly. Get hot opening ideas. Then subscribe to patreon.com/PowerPlayChess, and for just $25 a month you get a newsletter with a detailed test game to gauge your standard of play. A monthly video with puzzles to test your calculating skills. A monthly opening survey where I give my take on a hot variation. Access to an archive of over 100 opening surveys. Access to video playlists so you can research your favourite openings using the PowerPlayChess archives. And as a patron, you are able to join in the exclusive live masterclasses where you can ask me questions directly. All this for only $25 a month. That's exceptional value. So do subscribe to patreon.com/PowerPlayChess. Enjoy the benefits and improve your chess. Well, it's time to break through. Pawn takes pawn. In fact, my computer wants to be very cool and play g5 first, which shows that white is in control, actually. That if you can take the time just to make this nice kingside pawn advance gaining more space, very good. But the human move is just a crash through. And after this, rook takes knight. It's basically just a little exchange to win a pawn. Very simple. So nice pin here. Niemann steps out, and now we have the technical phase. Giri is a clear pawn up in a bishop endgame. Now, bishop endgames can be rather drawish. I'm not just opposite colour bishops, but here the conditions are pretty good. Very, very nice kingside pawn majority. And the basic idea will be to create a passed pawn on the king side and then find a route through for the king to go for the a pawn while black's king is looking after a passed pawn here. g5 is a good start, so you don't want those pawns fixed on the light squares. So g5, very nice move. You know, you want to rule out some situation where black plays, you know, h6 and g5. So that's a good start. And really, black can't do much here. You can see that the path through to the a pawn is blocked. Those squares are covered. King d4. Is this a problem? The king very active? Actually, not really. Giri exchanged and played a4. So he wants to make sure that this pawn isn't in trouble. So he advances that as far as possible. The king at the moment is preventing a breakthrough. We'll come on to that in a second. So anyway, first step, put that pawn down the board, and it's actually very safe. Yeah, if the king goes back to claim it, then, well, first of all, white creates a passed pawn, and yeah, it's actually a very easy win. So Niemann is hoping that he's basically blocked out white's king. So it obviously can't step forward. So how does white win? You want to create a passed pawn, but at the moment white is blocked out. So have a very quick think. How would you solve this one? White to play and win. In fact, it's not too difficult. You just have to imagine, where do you want this bishop? Well, you want that bishop on g4. An exchange will be a winning pawn endgame with white a pawn up. And if the bishop moves away, then the king can advance to take the pawn. So the question is, how do you get the bishop to g4? Well, Giri played bishop e2. And his idea is simply bishop d1, bishop b3, bishop f7, bishop h5 and bishop g4. Goes around the houses like a snooker ball, going off the cushions, bouncing around. That's what you've got to do to get to pop the ball. And there's nothing that black can do to prevent this. Let me show you. In fact, Niemann played king c5 here, but if, let's say, bishop e6, okay, we'll continue. Black can only wait, nothing to do, bounce, bounce, and you get there, and king f5. As advertised. Very easy win. So Niemann played king c5, but that allows e5. So white has created a passed pawn on the king side after this exchange. Then the pawn is going to fly through. King d5. Okay, takes the pawn. And king e5. And that was the final move of the game. So Niemann resigned. So let's just check out exactly why he resigned. Well, you can see that this king has gained ground. As I mentioned before at the start of this endgame, basically white wants to distract black with this passed pawn and then head for the a pawn. It's another reason why Giri advanced here. So, okay, black can't do much. First of all, let's put this pawn as far down the board as possible. Doesn't matter how you do it. And the king can go back to f8 straight away. You can dive in straight away, actually. But, okay. Let's do this. And the a-pawn drops, and black's king is busy looking after the f-pawn. Very smooth technique from Anish Giri. That's his forte. He's a brilliant technician, actually. So, actually a very smooth last round win. I think, good opening preparation. He appreciated, he has a slight steady advantage here. And when Niemann played inaccurately, a couple of inaccurate routes, rook e8, and at the end, in this position, king e7, then he seized his moment to make the break with b4, and that gave him a decisive advantage. Excellent play from Anish Giri. So that win catapulted him above the others. The other qualifier, now all the other top games were drawn, which meant that the player with the best tiebreak would go through, and that turned out to be Matthias Blühbaum from Germany. Now, he has had an excellent tournament. He plays very gritty chess. He drew his last 3 games, had to work so hard against Vincent Keimer, his compatriot, in the penultimate round, and held on to draw a tough endgame. In this game, Firuz Jah really went for him, played a Dutch, but Blühbaum again played very gritty chess, and well, you can see we're in a rook and pawn endgame. These rooks on the 7th rank look quite tasty, but rook e2. That's a beautiful defense. Cutting these rooks in half. Watch out for that a pawn. So if rook takes, then you get a queen, and well, that should be a draw. And something similar happened in the game. Rook a1 check. King f2. Takes, same thing. And Bluebaum drew this endgame very comfortably. He's losing a pawn, but this is very nice. This is really nice. He makes sure that the king is bottled up. So rook d7, that just about forces h6. Rook takes pawn. Now, excellent move, rook d5, g5 forced, and rook d6. And you can see this king simply cannot escape. If it advances, then this pawn is taken. And there is nothing for Firouzja to do in this position. He put his rook on g6, trying to free his king that way, so if the rook moves back, I mean, it would still be a draw. If White's rook moves back, then the rook can make way for the king. But of course, in this position, it's possible just to exchange and play f4. And that's, of course, a drawn endgame. That was the final move. King takes pawn and a draw. So Matthias Bluebaum played with great determination. He's an excellent technical player. Plays a lot of endgames. So he won 4 games and drew 7. But he had really tough opposition. And I think with that gave him the best tiebreak with the highest average rating of opponents. So 2 qualifiers for the candidates, Anish Giri and Matthias Bluebaum. Congratulations to them. And we now have 3 players who are heading for the candidates, Fabiano Caruana and the 2 I've just mentioned. Hope you enjoyed my coverage. More coming on the channel very soon. Thanks for watching.